Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of RinkWide Vancouver. They'll be busy tonight with the Canucks in Chicago to face Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks. And Jeff has just finished listening to Patrik Allvin's media availability. I'm just seeing some of the clips, Jeff, too. It was a scrum, too, huh? They didn't put him on a riser or a podium in the media room.
No, and I don't know if that's his preferred method, but he did it on Wednesday the same way. And here he was again today addressing the media in that fashion. So, we had about 15 minutes with the general manager of the Vancouver Canucks. He spoke about what he did and what he wasn't able to do here at the trade deadline and about the direction of this hockey club moving forward now. Nothing earth-shattering. He was trying to put the positive spin on that they accomplished a fair bit of what they had set out to do here this week. Of course, I think like a lot of people, I went to bed last night fired up that, hey, Conor Garland's moved out of the way here. Now their Friday is clear. They can hit the ground running up until the deadline. And, of course, it sort of fizzled up until those final minutes when they moved off the depth contracts of Kampf and Reichel. But I guess you have to look at the deadline in totality, and that is the week that was, not just the hours that were here on Friday morning. And so they did accomplish, I think, one of their goals to move veterans with term, but also left a lot of us wanting just a little bit more.
What stood out to you from Allvin's comments, Jeff? Because for us, it was the lack of offers on Teddy Bluger and, why he wasn't driving that process, but also that the fans should be happy because they're not starting from scratch. Maybe let's start with that second one. The fans should be happy, Jeff, because they're not starting from scratch.
Be happy.
Provide the context there, my friend.
What, you're not happy? They're 32nd in the league and sinking like a stone. That was curious, certainly. I don't think they're really in a position to tell the fans what to think. I mean, the fans will judge for themselves, and their work is there on display on a nightly basis, and it hasn't been anywhere close to good enough all season long here. So the idea they're not starting from scratch, I mean, that's part of the reason that they're in the predicament that they're in, isn't it? That their highest paid player has woefully underperformed, but it's not just him. But the trickle down there is that the lack of center depth, which was an issue going into the season, has impacted the wingers greatly. DeBrusque, Besser, Garland, you pick them. There isn't a winger outside of Drew O'Connor that really has exceeded expectations on this hockey club this year. So not starting from scratch, but maybe not far off scratch than just looking at sort of what they have here moving forward. And I didn't get into it today because there will be a year-ender, and that will probably be the better time. But it does make you wonder a little bit, guys, about the direction of the hockey club. And I mean, you can make the jokes, the direction. There's only one way to go, and that's up. But they've had bad teams here for a lot of years, right? We've seen that. We've all lived through it. They've never been this bad in the modern era, and they certainly have never been 32nd in the National Hockey League and dead last in the standings. And so this idea of improving the hockey club measurably in the short term, there's their last place team. They've got no star power. They don't have the bells and whistles of a practice facility. I do wonder how difficult it's going to be to attract anybody to come and play here this summer. A year from now, if they show signs of progress and they look like they're getting out of the wilderness, maybe it'll be a little bit easier, and maybe some teams and players and agents will see that as well. But in the here and now, why would a free agent choose to come to the Vancouver Canucks?
No, there's no reason, Jeff. Like even taxes, you can get into myriad of reasons.
Right.
Look, Vancouver remains one of the most desirable cities to live in the world over. And at some point that will work in the Canucks' benefit. But you're quite right. The totality of reasons not to on the other side of the ledger would prevent. But
that's why we applauded the Ryan Strome to Calgary.
Do you even want them getting free agents this summer? There's that argument as well.
But
right?
the Ryan Strome to Calgary was a great example of a creative thing that Calgary can use that guy for a few months and then flip him. And we wondered about that yesterday. There was no creativity there.
You say that, Blake, but clearly that was the design. When they acquired Evander Kane last year, clearly the idea was play him for the season and get something, and in their minds probably thinking they were going to get more than they paid for him at the trade deadline. And I think there's a lesson here for Evander as well. Like, he's culpable in this. If he had played better, if he had been more engaged, if he had looked like a piece that teams around the league thought, yeah, he's still got it, that's what we need for our playoff push and ultimately for the playoffs. He wants to play beyond this season. He wants a contract. Like, I think this year is going to lead Evander Kane, and pardon this because there's kids lacrosse going on here. I didn't realize on game days that there are not just the big show tonight. There's kids lacrosse going on here at Rogers Arena. But like, I kind of feel like Evander Kane's going to have to accept a PTO to show himself in the preseason and earn a contract, because this year has gone so quietly for him. And when you ask what stood out from Patrik Allvin, one of the questions I asked him was, like, philosophically, now, you had to showcase David Kampf and Evander Kane. I understand that. I think the fans understood that. There's 21 games to go. They owe Evander Kane nothing at this point. They owe his paychecks on payday. But like, in my world, I'm not sure that Evander Kane needs to play another game for the Vancouver Canucks if it's going to be in the way of some of those young guys. Like, Max Sasson and Aatu Räty have been patient. They have waited. Sasson got into the lineup the other night. I think he's playing again here tonight. But like, there should not be a world in which anybody is scratched for Evander Kane over the final 21 games. Now, sort of a sidebar to that is, and I don't know if you've discussed this, Evander's 11 games away from 1,000 in the National Hockey League.
Does he get there?
It could happen on the Vancouver Canucks watch. It would be one of the more awkward ceremonies, I would think, in recent memory here at Rogers Arena, to salute a guy that hasn't been here. I mean, he's been here one season, but it's been a last place season. He's been a part of all that, and you're feting him for 1,000 years. But a local guy, and
I was just going to say, Jeff, at least it's in his hometown. And look, it would have been awkward in any other market in the NHL as well. But you're quite right.
He needs to play half the games.
As for the other stuff about playing, no loyalty to Kane and playing the kids, Mayor of Wrightville, right, Jeff?
Did you get any light shed on Aatu Räty's situation here going forward?
Well, just that Patrik Allvin agreed with my premise when I put the question, basically that you know, the veterans cannot stand in the way of the growth and development. And he agreed with that. And he said that, you know, there are some players that they want to get a look at down in Abbotsford. He named Czech Kirill Kudratsev, who's been out for a while, but apparently is returning to the Abbey lineup tonight. Now, there was some confusion as well, because there was a report that Ty Mueller had been recalled. The hockey club says that's not the case, and that Ty Mueller is not in Chicago with the Vancouver Canucks and will play in Abbotsford. Of course, Ty Mueller has seen the NHL ice a couple of games late last season. You know, but I wondered, I also asked, like, you know, it's not just about plugging young players and giving them a chance, even though the Canucks are playing out the string here. And Patrik Allvin said, like, they got to make sure that these guys are, you know, veteran enough. I say veteran, even some of the, like, I'm looking at is Sawyer Minio worth a look at this point? Vilmer Alriksson, you know, do you just leave them down in the minors and continue to ply their trade there? Are they ready for NHL looks? They've still
college free agents too, Jeff. They'll be hopefully hoping to bring a college, and they usually get some games by way of their decision.
Yeah, and he said that yes, that is certainly something that they're looking at. Didn't get too deep into the weeds there, but it was brought up, and so you're right. That may be another avenue that they're looking at in terms of guys that they want to slot in. They may not even be in the organization at this very moment, but we shall see. But yeah, youth. I think basically what he was saying is that yes, youth shall be served here over these final 21 games.
Although Curtis Douglas comes in and eats up some playing time, and I don't know that I'm that much of a fan of that. Given I'd rather see all these other guys rather than 26-year-old Curtis Douglas.
I've got time for this signing, and not this player particularly, though. At 6'9", I mean, I am curious to see what he looks like in a Vancouver Canuck uniform. But let's be honest. I mean, this team, even with Kiefer Sherwood, but particularly since they dealt Kiefer Sherwood, has lacked a true identity, has lacked a lot of physicality. Kiefer Sherwood would hit anything that moved, but he wasn't a deterrent in the true sense of the word. You know, there wasn't a ton of intimidation factor with a guy like Kiefer Sherwood. He was just honest and you know, tried to finish every check that was available to him. This is a different animal. And if you're going to incorporate all these young guys and you want to make sure that other teams aren't taking liberties with them, you want to provide them with a safe working environment, I don't mind, for zero acquisition cost, claiming a guy on waivers. And so when I saw him go on waivers yesterday in Tampa, I thought, you know what, that's probably a player that's worth a shot for the Vancouver Canucks. And you've got these 21 games here to see what he can do. I mean, I think we know what he can do. Can he find willing dance partners on the other side at this stage of the season. I suppose we shall see on that front, but I'm okay. I think moving forward, this is something that the Vancouver Canucks, as they go about the idea of reconstructing and rebuilding this roster, like, I think there are a lot of people that want to see them have a few players that have that backbone, that bring a physical element that they've just been way too easy. Forget about the score clock. They've been way too easy to play on the ice for much of this season and really the last couple of seasons. And so I did wonder, just philosophically, if this management group believed in having and employing this kind of player. So as much as I thought it might make sense, I wasn't sure that they'd go through with it, but they have now, and we'll see. Tampa's in Toronto. They were in Winnipeg last night. The Canucks are in Winnipeg tomorrow. If Curtis Douglas had known, he could have just stayed in Winnipeg and met them there, but that's not how it works. But Patrik Allvin thought that he wouldn't play tonight, but he probably will join the team in Winnipeg for Saturday.
Jeff, we addressed Curtis Douglas before, earlier in the show. It's not about the hockey anymore. It's about come on down and see the sideshow freak at Rogers Arena. It's very much like an expansion team signing, right? He's 6'9", he's 240, and he fights. Honestly, exactly. Like, honestly, this is the sort of move that you could see from a hockey team playing in like a barnstorming league in Wichita, Kansas, or somewhere like that.
Let me ask. As we know, that player doesn't exist on every team. And
I know it's going to work. It's absolutely. You look at our mentions when we talk about Douglas. There are some who are absolutely
happy about it,
happy because they get to go see a fight at Rogers Arena. You're not going to watch the hockey or the home team win, for God's sakes.
I'm saying I don't know that you do, because there aren't those. Not every team has Curtis Douglas, and so finding that fight may not be as easy as you think on a lot of
honestly
nights.
Who would fight 6'9", 240 on skates?
But also, who's going to get that? Who's going to get that riled up playing the Canucks right now? Like, you need emotion on the other side.
Unless somebody does something dirty, you're quite right. Like,
and there's no stakes in any game with the Canucks.
So. No, and of course, like, why would you jeopardize what has been a pretty easy 2 points at Rogers Arena when you come to
and get a concussion and be out?
Come to town, right? We don't need to try hard or give it our all or leave life and limb at Rogers Arena for 2 points. We just waltz in, play 20 minutes, we're good.
On the entertainment side, Jeff, do you think that Adam Foote changes how he coaches the rest of the way here, developmentally, just trying to get the best out of these players? Like, is there any chance that this team tries to do something just a little bit differently, given that he's got new guys coming in here? This is a complicated defensive system that has not worked at the best of times anyway. Like, what do you expect to see here the last 21 games?
Yeah, I don't imagine that they'll be appreciably different visually and stylistically. I think Adam Foote has his beliefs that he has clung to, and they haven't worked particularly well for him in the hockey club this year, but I don't see him at this stage, upsetting the apple cart and painting outside the lines just because. So I think it's a fair question. There isn't a whole lot to play for. Professional pride. We can say, look at the young guys, and I think the idea of truly assessing the growth and development, especially the defensemen, is difficult when the Canucks are just so ghastly in their own zone and on a nightly basis giving up so many offensive opportunities and ultimately so many goals. It's hard to sit here and say that, they got 21 games to go. So the previous 21 games, have I seen a ton of development in Tom Willander or Zeev Bouillon or DPD? Now you got Victor Mancini thrown into the mix here. I think it's going to be tough again to really, truly assess individual growth and development, but I do want to see opportunities for these guys. I don't need Phil Hronek and Marcus Paterson eating up 30 minutes each so that the other guys only have 10 minutes to play. Spread the ice time around. Philip Hronek's had a nice season for the Canucks, but you don't want to run him into the dust or run him into the ground. And so I think for me, what I want to see is opportunities. Opportunities for young guys to play at even strength, but also some of the special teams as well. Like, they've started to incorporate Liam Ogren as a penalty killer. Great. I want to see that. Continue with that. DPD's had a nice couple of games here. There was the snarl that returned the other night. I want to see if he can keep that up with sort of any level of consistency. the rest of the way, because I do think that sets him apart on that blue line. I'd like to see Victor Mancini lean into his size and be more physical. I don't know if it's in him, because I still think he thinks at the NHL level that he can be a dangler. And they've got Buium, they've got Willander in front of him. I think if you're Victor Mancini, you got to take a long look here and think, what's going to allow me to carve out a National Hockey League career? It's not lugging the puck all over the ice. They've got other guys to do that. And so he's got the physical traits. I just don't know if it's in his DNA to sort of be mean, big, rugged. But I'd like to, I think on the right side, there's an opportunity for somebody like Mancini. But if he's not going to play that way, then they'll go and find somebody that will. So, he's getting to a point. He's going to turn 24 here before too long. There's still some runway, but not a ton of developmental runway for Victor Mancini. And so I am curious to see what these final games look like if he plays them, each and every one of them, the rest of the way.
I have two more questions for Jeffrey. One is, we have yet to ask you your take on the Conor Garland trade, Jeff. What did you make thereof?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good move for the hockey club to get off one of these veterans that we've been discussing for a while now. It just happened to be Conor Garland. I think Conor Garland's a way better player than he has shown here this season. I mean, who's had a good year for the Vancouver Canucks? It's a pretty short list. Conor Garland's at his best when he's fiery and ferocious and feisty. I think all the losing has taken its toll. I think some of the injuries this year, we haven't seen that from Conor Garland much. I think he's been a little bit better of late than he was certainly through late December and into January. But I think for so many reasons, and I'm sure you've all addressed them, it's going to be 30 next week. The extension, the trade protection, the underperformance this year, all of those things were always going to limit his return. And the fact that the Canucks got off the extension without retaining a dollar, you kind of have to take the return that you got in the second and the third, and so be it. You add it to the collection of draft picks. But it
was a bargain, Jeff. There weren't many bargains on the deadline market, and Garland was different, no doubt, because of the 6 year.
But you saw it with Michael McCarron and Nick Hague. Teams still value size at playoff time, right? Like they're always Tyler Myers, Nick Delorier goes, Curtis Douglas gets picked up, although he's not going to the playoffs. But it's hockey, and till the end of time, the big, tall, strong guys are always going to get more shouts than a guy like Conor Garland, who, again, isn't everybody's cup of tea. I think the fact he's going to a team that's a point out of the playoffs right now, and every game matters for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the pot of gold at the end of that rainbow is that if they win enough, he's going to get to play playoff hockey. I hope that inspires him. I think that they will see a renewed and sort of a return to that Conor Garland that we saw during the playoff run here the playoff series a couple of years ago against Nashville and Edmonton. I have to catch myself anytime I suggest that was a playoff run.
No, that's fair.
But Garland's a better player, and we saw it. But we also saw, guys, that he's a unique player, and it took him a long time to sort of forge chemistry with anybody here because he's a unique player at his size. I do think that he has learned, and it makes sense. He's going to be 30. It comes with experience. But, he didn't – remember when they first acquired him? I think it drove some people in the organization nuts, all the spins and trying to do everything on his own. I think he realized that really didn't work at the end of the day for him or the hockey club, and he sort of got that out of his game. I think he's going to – no, I'm excited to see what he can do, and I think the fact that he's playing games with stakes will bring out the best in Conor Garland, because I do maintain he's a better player than we saw this year. How do you go as long as he had the 23 games without a goal? But beyond that, that was an empty netter at Madison Square.
Oh, it is.
November 26th. That's the last time that he's beaten a goaltender in the National Hockey.
Unbelievable. It was U.S. Thanksgiving. It was damn near a Grey Cup the last time he scored.
And guys, his production was effectively matched. He's about to make $6 million a year. His production effectively matched this year by Linus Karlsson and Drew O'Connor. You can go and get the 0.4 points per game guy for a lot cheaper than $6 million a year.
Yeah, but as Jeff says, he's better than that. He's got track record where some of these guys don't. And Columbus, at the very least, viewed it as a neutral, if not a positive, that he has cost certainty going forward. So there's a lot of ways you can splice the Garland deal. Blake and I have already disagreed on that. It sounds like Jeff's a little closer to your camp. So be it. Jeff, I was under the impression NHL clubs on their own media channels, and of course every sports organization these days, if you're not a media company or have a media arm, you're falling behind. I was under the impression that every NHL team streams its general manager's press conference on trade deadline day. It's a signpost day. Fans are anxious to hear from the general manager. What happened today that they didn't put Patrik Allvin on their own social media channels and on their website?
You're asking me to explain the inner workings of the Vancouver Canucks, Matt? I'm not sure I'm qualified. I don't know. I was surprised. I mean, we had these discussions that we thought that it was going to be the case, and then it wasn't. I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that some of the social team is in Chicago on a game day for the Canucks, and or if they just organizationally decided that they didn't want the GM's message to get out there, and yet he was asked point blank by Patrick Johnston to the fans. So the floor was his to speak to the constituents, and yet I'm sure they'll post it after the fact. But yeah, I'm a little surprised too that they didn't take the opportunity. And I guess that goes back to the way we started, that it was just Allvin and a collection of reporters rather than the general manager of a National Hockey League team at a dais or a podium speaking to the assembled group of questioners.
Very odd, if not telltale. You've had a busy day already. You got a busy one tonight. RinkWide Vancouver with Jeff after the game against the Hawks tonight in Chicago, and back at it again tomorrow after that matinee against Winnipeg. Jeff, thanks for this. We'll catch up Monday.
All right, guys. Sounds good. Thanks.